county of Worcestershire really is a fabulous place to live. From the vibrant cathedral city of Worcester to the wonderful lifestyle of countryside living at its very best. At RJ Country Homes, we specialise in selling village and country properties across this glorious county. And, together with property industry experts, we will be giving you some top tips and expert advice about moving home and guiding you along the way. Joining me today is a very talented man by the name of Jonathan Shaw. Jonathan, welcome.
Thank you very much.
You are the exclusive garden designer for Rune Landscape Designs.
That's right, yes.
So where are you based?
We are based in Pinvin, which is in Worcestershire, near Pershore, and we cover an area of basically the Worcestershire, Gloucestershire, mostly the Midlands and into the Cotswolds, and a little bit towards the Welsh borders as well.
Fantastic. How lovely. We're in September and the weather is just...
It's been pretty terrible, hasn't it, of late? But thank God today we have some nice weather, which is good.
Yeah. How did you get into designing gardens?
Garden design and horticulture has been part of my life ever since I was very, very young. My dad gave me a little plot in the garden where I was growing a little bit of conifers and heathers and that sort of thing. And from there I just got a passion for it, and I went to study on for 9 years doing horticulture.
9 years?
That's
Gosh.
right, quite a long time. But I wanted to have a taste of many different aspects of horticulture, and I fell in love with garden design. And I did a number of courses, and then I did my BA and did that, and this is where I am today, really. Brilliant. 13 years later, so yeah.
And it's funny because on the show we've spoken a lot about kitchens and bathrooms, interiors. It's an area that we don't tend to think of until after we've done the interiors, and yet it's such an important part because it's another really useful space.
No, it really is, and it has become more apparent, I think, over the last 10 to 15 years that people are using their outdoor spaces more than not necessarily more than their inside spaces, but they're out socializing, they are having fire pits, they're doing this, they're doing that. You can even get gardens with televisions in them nowadays.
Yes.
and music centers, so it is very much becoming part of our everyday life in gardens.
Definitely, and I suppose you tailor it for each person, but it's knowing where to start, isn't it? When you've got this, it can be a blank canvas, or it could be a garden that you get and you think, I just don't like this garden, it doesn't work for us. So it's knowing, where do we start with our garden?
Where do you start? That is a very good question. Well, I really think to start with, you have to identify what it is that you want from your garden. So if you have a family, for instance, and you have small children, then you need to be thinking about, well, I need to make the most of this space. They need to play football, they need a trampoline, they need swings, or that sort of thing. If it's an adult space, then you need to be thinking about, well, how do I use this space socially? I have dinner parties and I want to be able to sit outside and socialise, in the sunshine, or in the shade, or at night time with all the lights on and that type of thing. So there's a lot to be thinking about with regards to that. But I think to start off with, it's just really identifying exactly what it is you want to use the space for. Yeah,
just like the inside, just taking it outside. So
exactly.
Same principle, really.
No, exactly. Inside you have your dining room, your kitchen, your living room. Yeah. Why not have all those things outside as well?
Yeah, definitely. Well, what mistakes? Because you have lots of different projects that you're doing. When you go and see a lot of gardens, what mistakes do you find that a lot of Brits are making?
Mistakes. There is one definite mistake that a lot of people do make, and that is if you have a rectangular garden, for instance, and you're looking out at it, the patio tends to be very, very close to the house.
True.
They've got their borders then right towards the boundary fences, and they've got their shed in the right or the left hand bottom corner. It is a mistake because as a design point of view, basic design principles dictate that you should not see all your garden in once.
Oh, okay.
At once. And it is important to really just, experiment a bit, get yourself into the space, get rid of the lawn a little bit, add more borders, take the patio away from the house and really make the most of that space.
Yes, it's getting out of our sort of comfort zone, because you're right. I think, a lot of people watching at home think, oh, actually, that's my garden. I do have borders running perfectly around the edge.
That's right.
The shed in the corner.
Yes.
Patio right by the house,
that's
rather than being brave and thinking, well, actually, a patio over there might be quite nice.
That's right, and I think people are frightened. They are frightened to take a little bit of lawn away. I've got a great example of that. My mum had a garden where it was fully lawned, and she had a few borders on there. And what basically happened was that I explained to her that if you just did this, and I put in some new borders and that sort of thing. And she went to bed crying that evening because
you made your mum cry.
I did. I know, bad son, very, very bad son. But the fact that she was taking a lot of the lawn away.
Yes.
She has now she is the most green-fingered person you will ever meet.
Bless her.
She loves her plants. She's constantly buying more plants, and that is because she got out of her comfort zone and she actually embraced bringing the garden in and making the most of that space.
Absolutely. So I suppose it's like if you have a new kitchen and it's totally different to what you're used to, and then you get used to it and you think, wow, this is amazing. Same with your gardens, really.
Exactly the same.
Yeah.
Yes.
What about patios and decking area then? Because have we got to do it in proportion to the size of your house? How do we go about starting a brand new patio or seating area?
Well, that's a very good question, because again, a lot of where people get it wrong is that the patio is too small, or the decking is too large for the space. It's all about scale. And if you are standing out in your garden and you're looking at your garden and you're thinking, well, how big should my patio be? If you look at the height of the house,
right,
and you think of that in quarters, for instance, if you then look at the, how far that patio is going to come out, you need to be looking at about 3/4 of the actual height of the house itself. So that gives you a rough idea of where you should be going with that. You can go too large, and what happens is it makes the space feel quite uncomfortable. And if it's uncomfortable, then you're not going to use it as much. And another great example really is to if you're wanting larger spaces, then mix the spaces up. Have different spaces within the garden. Don't just necessarily have one large space.
Yes.
Why not have 3 different spaces?
And maybe where the sun falls. If you have a bit of sun in that, in that corner, in that space in the afternoon, have a nice seating area.
No,
there,
that's right. And a lot of people will say, that they my garden is very shaded, but at the same time I have this corner that only gets the sun in the evening.
Yeah.
And so make the most of that. Utilize that. But we also need shade.
Yes,
we also need
absolutely.
shade because it can sometimes be hot in this country.
Yes, that's true. Sometimes.
Yes, sometimes.
Now, there's lots of different styles with our gardens. We're going to talk through the different styles with you now.
Yes.
If we start off with your typical English country garden,
Yes.
which we're going to show you now, talk
Yes.
us through your typical English country look.
Well, a typical English country garden is normally a bit on the large side. So you have very large borders of shrubs or perennial planting. And in those borders, we call it the amphitheatre effect. So what you have is very large plants towards the back, and then coming down to very small ones at the front. Large swathes of planting, so not just planting in 1s or 2s or 3s, you're planting in 11s, 15s and 20s, and also huge expanse of lawn.
Yes.
And from a material point of view, you're looking at very more traditional materials, so your sandstones and that sort of thing as well.
Yeah.
So that really, really says a lot about the typical English country garden.
And then we go to a totally different look, but the contemporary look. So
Yes.
talk us through the sort of straight lines.
Well, contemporary is, like you just said, it is very much straight lines, but it can also be shapes, so circles or hexagons or that sort of thing. But it's not just the simplicity of the line, it is also the simplicity of the hard materials that are used, and also the planting. So, for instance, if you had a square garden and you put in, you wanted to know exactly what materials to put in, I would only perhaps choose 1 to 2 materials to put in there. And with the planting, just choose 3 or 4 different types of planting.
Fairly low maintenance then, if you've got less plants, or still, I suppose, to get those pristine lines, it still needs care.
It is, and a lot of people will grow things in pots, and a mistake that people do make is that they buy lots of small pots and fill them up.
Yeah.
Go big,
Yeah.
celebrate the space,
Don't be
and
afraid.
especially with the contemporary space, go really big, put some large bamboos or some aces or that sort of thing in there, and you can really make a space look very, very contemporary in that way.
Yeah.
But it is, as you said, it is down to very, very straight, minimal lines, and the more simplistic the space is, the more contemporary it is.
Yeah. Now we go on to family gardens. I love where we're sitting right now, and
Thank you,
it's
thank you.
just stunning. Talk us through this and talk about family gardens.
Well, this is we finished this project around about 4 weeks ago, and it is it's a cottage the inside out. The client wanted to have a garden that was represented a ruin. She's got a couple of grandchildren, and they've adopted it as their Wendy house.
I bet my children would love this area.
Which is absolutely
gorgeous.
Brilliant. And it is a fantastic space.
And I think that's the idea of family gardens. We want it low maintenance, but we can still have
that's
lots
right.
in it.
Well, family gardens, as we started the show, it is very important to have spaces that are usable and practical for children. You don't want to be putting in very deep pools and that sort of thing. They want to be able to play football. They want their swings. They want their trampolines and that sort of thing. But also, what you've got to do is you've also got to think about in long term. So long term for family gardens, they're not going to be around forever. So you don't want to be then having to redesign your garden in 6 years' time.
Yes, of course. Well, we've got so much to talk about after the break. We are going to be looking at how to design your garden regardless what shapes and sizes. So see you in a few minutes. Welcome back. Now, before the break, we looked at different styles with your gardens. We're now going to be looking at garden design regardless of what shape or size, which, Jono, I imagine in your profession you've come across every shape and size imaginable and you're not fazed by a thing.
We have from 4 metre square to 6 to 7 acres of gardens. So yes, we have seen it all.
So what do you find then is the easiest shape to work with, or the easiest size?
Very oddly, you would think it would be a square.
Yes, yeah, definitely.
But actually it isn't, because you have to try and fit a lot into quite obviously a square shape. Whereas actually if you had an area that was intricate and had lots of different sections to it, it's actually a lot easier to design that, because you are creating individual spaces within that section.
So what's the most challenging then when you turn up? Because there must have been the odd job where you turn up and you think, oh gosh, what am I going to do with this space?
I think the most challenging are the square gardens, but on a large scale.
Okay.
Where you realise that you have to be able to create lots of different garden spaces in that huge space, and that is actually quite difficult to do.
Yeah, well, my parents moved to the country, the downsized, but they've got a lovely plot of land, and it's so big they're kind of at first a little bit sort of scared on what do we do with this big space? How do we break it up? And it's tricky.
Yeah, well, I think that whenever you're looking at a space, it's like we said before the break, it's really about identifying what you want to use the space for. And once you've done that, then you can actually start slotting in your mind where you'd like that patio to be, where you would like that to be, and where you'd like that to be, and how they're all going to work together. So the transition between each of those spaces.
Yes.
So if you want to get from the patio to the lawn, do I just want to walk straight onto the lawn, or do I want to go through framed planting before I get onto the lawn, or that sort of thing? It really is just about identifying what it is that you want and how that's going to fit into that space.
And that's the beauty of using someone like a garden designer like yourself, because I think, my mum and dad had that debate of my dad going, no, we don't need to get anybody in, we'll be fine. And my mum going, no, we need to get... And they got somebody in. Wow, it's the most amazing place to be at now. But that's the beauty of having a garden designer.
Yeah, well, a lot of clients, over the years of doing this, have called upon my services, and they've said we have all these ideas, but we just don't know how to put them into the space
together. Yeah.
And that's usually the issue. So I think from my point of view is I listen to the clients, I listen to what it is that they want, and I resolve those things by using basic design principles and all the things that I've learned over all the years.
Yeah. Does it have to be expensive? Because you think it's going to cost a lot of money. Can you do it in phases?
Well, with gardens, it literally is, you have to identify how much it is you want to spend. So you need to set yourself a budget. Always have a contingency plan, just in case there's, you go over on something. But if you set yourself a budget and you stick to that, and especially when using a garden designer, one of the biggest influences a garden designer has is the budget.
Yeah, of course.
Because you could spend, say you had a 4 metre by 4 metre space, you could spend £500 in that space. You could spend £50,000 in that space. But as long as you are, you have identified how much you'd like to spend, and if you have a good garden designer, the garden designer will design within that budget and try and give you everything that you require from that.
What do you love about gardens? What are you really passionate about?
I just love the connectivity with clients and the building of everything, just to be able to foresee what it is going to be like, design it, and then see it 3 years on after it's been constructed is absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, I suppose that's where you really see the difference, when the shrubs and everything else have a chance to, everything's just a bit more established. And...
Well, I think that's where it comes with clients, is that you've designed something, you envisage it in your head those years on. And then when you are, you've done the plans, you've then built the garden, and all the plants have gone in fairly small, some have gone in quite large. and you get to that point and you think, still not quite there yet for me.
Yeah.
And then I go back then perhaps 2-3 years later to take photographs or anything like that, and I get goosebumps. Absolutely, because it's like you've seen something from your past.
Yeah, it's
and
like your baby, isn't it? It's grown.
It is. It is an absolute tremendous feeling. Absolutely wonderful feeling.
What's your favourite plant?
My favourite plant? Well, I don't actually necessarily have a favourite plant. I
Not
actually
one.
have. I like compositions. I have a favourite composition, if you like. So if I choose 3 plants that I like working together, I like Verbena bonariensis, and I think that works very, very well with something called Euphorbia wolfenii, which is absolutely wonderful because the contrasting between the leaves and the textures. And then if you add something like a Salvia officinalis, which is just your normal sage, again, it adds more texture. There are so many different compositions that I love. But that is just one example.
They've all got fabulous names, haven't they?
Well, they have, yes. No, they definitely have.
Flamboyant names.
And many, many different garden designers and people in the horticultural industry will name them. They'll be all spelled the same, but they will all be said slightly differently.
Yeah, drop little nicknames, shorten them a little bit.
But it's really funny because a lot of clients will say to me, can I have such and such? And I won't recognise the name, and it's because they're using their common names. And I'm not, trying to sound posh or anything like that. Yeah. But I just have never learnt the common names to these plants.
You trained for 9 years. I mean, you know all of them at the back of your hand. Don't you?
Well, not all of them. No, not quite. There's millions of them out there. But and I think as a horticulturist as well as a garden designer, you don't pretend to know absolutely everything. It's a completely learning experience right the way through, and I'll be learning until I retire.
And that's the beauty, isn't it, of life?
Yes.
They're always learning.
Absolutely.
And we're looking at different shapes and sizes, so we're going to talk through for you. So if you're at home thinking, well, I've got the long, narrow garden, or I've got a big square garden, let's start off first of all with, we've spoken briefly about it, but a really small garden, perfectly neat and tidy, but it's really small, and you think, well, what do I do with it?
Well, what's quite interesting with all shapes of gardens, really, is that they all need to be split into sections. Like I said, seeing all your garden in one go is really quite bad design. It's about intrigue and about drawing you from one space into another. So starting with a small space, it's quite interesting that you think, well, I need to be able to identify what it is, like we've talked about. So say you want to have a wonderful seating area, social seating area, I would try and enclose that with planting so that you're not dominated by fence lines and that type of thing, and to really make it feel like a room and your roof is the sky at night.
It's softer.
Absolutely, without a doubt.
And we've got a drawing to show you now, actually. So you start off with a plan, everything's down on your drawing, and then of course you see it right through to the final result.
That's right. So this example that we're showing you now is really an example of what the client will receive once we have designed their garden. So this is just it being built.
Yeah, the exciting part when you can see what's going to be happening.
That's right.
Now, the long, narrow garden, which a lot of older properties have got that typical long, narrow garden that you think, how do I break that up and how do I add interest?
Well, narrow gardens are quite interesting because you could have something that's only 5 metres to 10 metres in width, but it could be 50 to 60 metres in length. And again, same principles, dissecting it into those areas so that you have intrigue. But the difference here is that you can't go left or right.
Yes,
you really are just going straight forward. So it's really about making sure that each of those sections are quite unique. Whereas before, if you went right or you went left, you could have a little bit of similarity between those spaces. Here you would perhaps go from a lawned area into a wildflower area, into a shrubbed area, into a vegetable garden area.
On and on.
That's right, yes. And on.
And on.
Yes.
What about really unusual spaces when you've got that garden and it's so sort of higgledy-piggledy, maybe it's tiered?
Yes.
What do you do with a garden?
I love these gardens. Not just solely because they are a challenge, but I absolutely adore these gardens, and I think it's because you can create these nook and cranny spaces, very similar to what we're sat in right now. It's about creating something quite unique. And when you have a garden that has these little higgledy-piggledy spaces all over the place, I absolutely adore.
Well, they're
that.
interesting from the off, aren't they? So from the moment you arrive, you think, oh, we've got that space over there, and actually tucked around the back, we've got that there.
That's right. So you could have a lounge area, you could have a dining area, you could have an outdoor kitchen area, a barbecue area.
They're becoming really popular now, aren't they?
Yes.
These outdoor kitchen areas.
They very much are. Yes, we have designed quite a number of kitchens into spaces this year. So
and then of course we've got the big garden, which we've mentioned briefly, just to make sure that you break it up into sections.
That's right, yes.
And not have your path all the way sort of around the outside, and
That's
all your,
right.
Making sure that you don't have that big lawned area, but you separate it.
Well, with large gardens, the key here is very similar to what we were talking about with regards to the traditional country gardens, is that anything nearer the house should stay a little bit more formal, maybe a little bit more contemporary. But as you then step away from that, you would end up into your lawn areas, and then it would get a little bit more natural as you go out. So with the larger areas, you stay quite formal towards the house, and then you would then just move like that from there.
And how do we keep on top of our gardens? I think everybody wants it to be reasonably low maintenance, although gardens are labours of love, and a lot of people like to spend a lot of time in the gardens, but how do you make it just a little bit easier on yourself?
Well, I think I've only ever had one client in 13 years ask me for not to have a low maintenance garden. So every client likes a low maintenance garden. But then low maintenance means something different to everybody. I think lawns are high maintenance to me.
True, how to keep the perfect lawn.
No, that's right. But I love planting, and as long as I think you're keeping the weeds down, and you don't need too much maintenance on your hard materials, I think it's a good way to go.
Yeah, so I had a driveway once, and next door done their drive and put these stones and hadn't put the membrane down, and I suppose it's doing things like that, isn't it? And
it is, and it's just making sure that the membrane is really quite an important thing if you're putting bark down or if you're putting gravel down. But also, even sometimes when you're putting paving slabs down, and not paving slabs, block paving, that sort of thing. It's also important to make sure that you've got weed suppressant as well.
Yes, definitely. We're all going to be back next week, where we're going to be looking at how to look after your garden through the season. So you take care, and I'll see you next week for more on Midlands at Home.